We are doing, Dan, why don't you introduce yourself?
I just want to say thank you, everybody, for attending this. I really appreciate it. So I did 21 years in the Coast Guard, and after I got out, I started trying to find out what else was out there for me, and that's where I met Jen at Impact in DC from one of my other friends, Nan. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today. I've been to Stanford one other time in my life. When I was a young kid, used to play football out here. I grew up in this area. My football coach brought us out here to Los Angeles South, play another team. And when I left this university, I went back to my high school, and everybody was asking me about how it went, how Stanford was. And I said it was great, and they were like, "Oh, it's so cool to see the campus." And to me, it was cool, but I knew from my background I was never going to go to a school like this. So to be here in front of me today, talking here at Stanford is very emotional for me, I think. And I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud to be representing the veteran community and trying to help my friends fight the good fight and with all the mental health issues out there, we just want to make sure that veterans have a place to go after service. It's a known fact that 22 veterans kill themselves a day. 22. That's almost 1 an hour. We've lost friends. Trent's lost friends. Graham's lost friends. You're going to hear from these people today. I've lost friends. And that can be stopped with the new technology that Jen has shown me and how to map the ring. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for our keynote speakers to speak. I'm excited for the world to hear this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dan. This is a very important moment for us, and thank you all for being here. I just want to briefly introduce all the speakers for the event today. And General, would you like to come up to the stage? Trent,
Well, good morning. My name is Major General Retired John Olson, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I spent 36 years retired out of the Air Force, stood in the Space Force, and spent a decade in NASA. So it is absolutely awesome to be here, and I think what you will see is the collective activities and outcomes from this event are going to launch much more than Elvis Ford and this incredible initiative. I think we're going to have a transformative impact on our nation and the health of the people and those who serve it.
Well, hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Trent Upton, as mentioned, happy to be here. And as John mentioned, I echo his comments. I think that there is very much an intersection of interest here in terms of not just improving healthcare to our service members and our veteran population, but also the broader population, and hopefully we get that through to you today.
Good morning, Graham Rudd. I'm co-founder and CEO of Test Intelligence. I started my career as a 18 Delta Special Forces medic and also worked for a time at the Department of Defense Lab assessing emerging technology, which led me into going to law school and then co-founding the company that I'm with right now. And there's a lot of intersectionality between the work I'm doing in the AI space and some of the stuff that you all are doing here. And as someone who has suffered from some of the things we're going to talk about today, I'm honored to be here and appreciate that this topic, which is relatively new, is starting to get some traction. When I was first dealing with it, I never thought we'd see something like this, so I'm very excited to be here.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Boyd. I'm a former police officer, SWAT operator, detective. I've been consulting in the wellness space for the past 5 years. I'm excited to be here. I'm really anxious to learn how this technology can help our veterans, help our first responders, and really help anybody who feels like they need the assistance. So I want to thank you guys for being here too. I look forward to meeting all of you today, and enjoy the conference.
Morning, everyone. I'm Al Bohr. I'm a former Marine, infantry and intel guy. I have the pleasure of actually going through using the technology and having my own brain scan. Suffer from lots of PTS, 3 TBIs last time I counted. So had a lot of brain trauma due to my service in service-connected disabilities. And I can say I did this. The Elvis stuff back in November, I think, and transformational, lots of great stuff that's happened. I'm excited to share some of the positive changes that happened for me because of this, and really excited to kind of share that story and that journey.
Thank you all. He was the first veteran we scanned. So with that, we'll get started with the program. Our first keynote speaker is Major General John Olson. Please. Thank you.
Well, we are absolutely fortunate with this beautiful weather here. And as former aerospace guy and NASA guy, I'll say we always love beautiful weather when we're trying to go for launch. And we are absolutely go for launch for something that I think is going to be absolutely historic and epic, and that is the launch of Elvis. And when you think about the absolute unbelievable nature, the live visualization of our brain circuits, what is more important to the human condition than our brains? If we think about it, we've always been taught mind over matter. We've always been talking about centrality. But as we join here, I look around and I see some incredible people, certainly the speakers that you're going to have today, but most importantly, as we look at what brought us here, I think I'd love to give a shout out to Sinan. As I was talking to everybody here in the morning, he has been such an integrator in a network. And I met Jin, Dr. Jin Lee here at an event in Washington, D.C., and she is such a profoundly engaging human being. And she was so conscientious. We met lots of outstanding people, but she was immediately unbelievable in follow-up, attention to detail. And the more I've gotten to learn who she is and what she's about, I can just honestly say she is a phenomenal human being. And so as we stand here, and like was said by Dan, as we stand here at the Stanford Faculty Club, just imagine incredible intellect and talent, and not just the faculty, but the people who studied here. Last night I had the opportunity to stay at the Stanford Park Hotel, and on all the hallways, about every 6 feet, there's a big picture of one of the iconic, very accomplished Stanford alums. And I asked Jen this morning if she's got her picture in there because I didn't see it yet. And I said, you know what? Nobody holds a candle to the potential that she has as a person who is built on 15 years of incredible, dedicated research and development here. As we look at what she's done, as a true pioneer, as a true trailblazer, she had a level of commitment and conviction because she believed in what she was doing because it was based on solid science, solid fundamentals. She drove that into existence. Many peers, many colleagues didn't think that she was on the right path. And I think we all know what kind of rigor and discipline it takes to survive and thrive through that. Well, what she has done is built on that 15 years of research, development, and honing. It's all brought us to this day where Nuvera, we're going to see the clinic, we're going to see that grand launch and opening, but this is a 10-year business. It's a 10-year business, so it's not brand new. It's not a brand new splash in the pan startup. But here in Silicon Valley and here at Stanford, it's where great things happen, great ideas launch, and great businesses occur. But so far beyond that, this is much, much bigger. this has the chance, and it's really not audacious at all when it comes from Jen. She says, you know, quote unquote, I think we can solve all brain disorders. And I said, well, what does solve mean? And it's not just preventing, but it's also treating them. And the audacity, the boldness, the incredibleness of that is just profound. As we look at it, we know that the brain is the main element. It is the thing. It is who we are. It's what we are. You know, we were talking this morning. If you don't have your health, what do you got? What do you have? And so it's that incredible in Maslow's hierarchy of things. Brain is the main. And as we look at this, what we're launching today and what we're part of today is certainly focused on veterans. This is an extraordinary segment, an extraordinary opportunity to transform lives. Every single person who learns about this, who touches it, who sees it. Not only are we personally interested, but we have a profound desire to share and serve others and share it and show it and amplify it. And so I believe, and it's not with hyperbole, it's not with gross amplification, I believe that Dr. Jin Lee and what she's developed here is no less important than what Marie Curie and the advent of penicillin, the advent of the X-ray. I believe Elvis is going to be in that category. And if she's not already in the Stanford Park Hotel, I know exactly the right place for that big picture to go because she deserves to be there. She will be there. So as we talk today, I want to share about 3 thoughts. I want to give a little context for increasing awareness of operator syndrome. Sounds pretty ugly term, operator syndrome. We'll talk about what that means, what it is, how this new tech can change the arc of history and the landscape, and we can tune it to fix and prevent and correct. And then we'll talk about what we can do and how you can support, how we can be catalytic in driving this forward. But, you know, as we talk about that, diving right back into the historic breakthroughs and the audacity of thinking that you can solve and are all brain disorders. What are we talking about? Well, stroke, sleep, epilepsy, anxiety, emotions, depression, autism, Alzheimer's, addictions. Those are incredible. When we look at today's focus in the veteran community, and when I say veterans, those who have been active, those who have retired, those who have served, it's not just that alone, and I'm so glad Adam is here. Because when we talk about our first responders, when we talk our frontline pros, our professionals out there, they're all contact sports, they're all putting their lives on the line, they're all engaged. This is a broader community, and yet those communities all have one cultural thread and one common attribute. We're all mission focused and we get her done. We gut through it, cover it up, we mask it, good to go, 100% we're ready until we're not. And this has the opportunity to really, really do some wonderful things. And so as we talk about it, as mentioned, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide. Suicide is an evolution of depression, and it is an absolute tragedy. You've heard the numbers, but we have an FDA clear regulatory map, an incredible 30-year game plan to implement and drive forward. This is stunning. This isn't a good idea factory that's all talk and no walk. This is launching today. And each one of you, thank you for being here, because what you are a part of is something so much bigger than what you actually think it is. You are here because you know of what we are going to do together is going to be absolutely extraordinary. And you know, as we talk about that, 22 suicides a day, that's absolutely tragic. Here's some other numbers. 450,000 US military service members have been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury since 2000. 82% of those are classified as mild. 9.1% of those are classified as moderate. About 1% plus are severe. 180,000 veterans are using VA healthcare today with at least one traumatic brain injury diagnosis. And that the fact is these numbers, although huge and massive, because each one is an important case, it's massively underreported. Because frankly, the culture and the attitude is not good. There's a lot more brothers and sisters who have a lot worse problems and a lot worse issues. And you know, we already know in our society and our culture that the people who serve others, the people who get her done and show up every day, they're the people who say, I don't need any help, I'm good, I'm covered up, I can deal with it, push through it, and that's what we do, day in, day out. But when we talk about it, we also have a problem where people say, hey, brain issues or mental health issues, these are a huge stigma, right? And who wants to say or be labeled as having something wrong with your brain? But how tragic is that when we absolutely have the incredible tools to resolve it? We have the ability to prevent, we have the ability to treat, and we have the ability to enhance. And this is non-invasive. Sure, it can be coupled with drugs and focused other elements. But the beauty is, for those of us who don't necessarily always trust biopharma and hate the culture of addiction that comes from pain management and other issues, this is so incredible because it's non-invasive. This is so incredible because it's real, it's tangible, it's research-driven. Every one of those diagnostic areas, every one of those incredible areas, we talk about dementia and the aging population and the greatest generation. This is an absolute national problem. It's the worst kind of thing if you've had a parent or a friend. They're there physically, but they aren't there mentally. It's the most difficult, painful, tragic thing to deal with. But with this tool, that's approachable, that's solvable. And as we look at these, as we look at these numbers, 97% of the injuries are not necessarily from combat. We train like we fight, but they occur in training injuries. And because we do train like we fight, because we're high speed, low drag, and we're engaged, these are really much more pervasive than we think. But here's some other numbers. Of all the services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and Space Force, don't forget about that last one. 220,000 cases across the Army. We got Trent and Graham here to talk about that. But for our frontline veterans, the stats are for every one, or for every 1 in 2 people who are doing breaching, who are doing door-to-door, close quarters. 1 in 2 have traumatic brain injuries. It's not just all IEDs or concussive effects from precision-guided weapons being close, but just shape charges opening doors and getting the job done. In fact, 19 to 23% are due of those numbers are due to blasts in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so, at a rate of 17,000 a year, this is a force health and readiness issue. It's a national issue, but it's not just for when you're retired or you're done. It is, or when you're actively serving. It's about when you're retired and done. It costs to Medicare, Medicaid, VA, and the nation. So with suicide, the number one cause of death in the U.S., 30,000 active and post 9/11 vets lost. 44% increase since 1980. Mostly affecting all demographics, but whites under 30 are the highest demographic. These things are the number one focus area for commanders that they're not getting done. It's the biggest failure of our leadership and our services and to our people, and we hate it. And finally, we have a tool to address all of this. And so I think as we talk about what we can do and leveraging this new tech, we can tune your brain, our brains, those we love, those we're responsible for, those who we care deeply about. We can tune, fix, correct, and unleash the awesomeness that each one of them has. And yes, we can resolve the stigma. Yes, we can show this is treatable, this is doable, this is executable. And so what do we need to do going forward? What do we need to do? Well, it's about bringing together this community. We're launching that today. We're going to have the first clinic. And frankly, if we don't have a proliferation of Nuvera clinics across the nation, in every state, every territory, across the world, we're missing the boat. So it's about supporting, it's about engaging in further studies. As much as she is a 20-pound brain herself and an absolute rock star of research, one talk with her, and she's so humble about how much more we need to learn and know and do. So studies, so engaging. So whether you're from Washington, D.C., in a public affairs, or a financial person, both of which I've spoken with this morning, or whether you're an influencer, or whether you have your own innovation center, this is about a cooperate, graduate mentality, but it's also about actively engaging and driving force forward. And we haven't even touched the surface about the enhancement and the optimization. I mean, people spend billions of dollars a year to amplify physical and cognitive performance, to do better in a very fast-paced and competitive world. But if we think about it, the most important core to that is your brain. So what we're today launching is so much bigger than just an opening of one clinic or a group of veterans to talk about how this is so awesome moving forward. But I'd like to say, let's personally commit, each and every one of us, be part of a team that brings this brilliant technology, this brilliant capability, and amplifies for all of humankind. This is really something that is extraordinary, and so the moment is now. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me share and open up how wonderful this truly is. And so I look forward to having you be riveted by the rest of these incredible people we're going to talk about how this has and will continue to personally transform their lives. But again, it's about the broader and bigger group, and serving that is what we do and how we do it. And this isn't one to mask, but this is one to rather say, hey, this is me, I believe in it, let's do this together. Thank you very much.
Just want to say thank you to General Olson. I'm going to invite up Trent. I just want to say a few words just before. I just want to thank all of our guests from coming from so far. We have Florenza and her team from Albania. They do a lot of things with the DIU version of Albania's DIU over there. We've got people flying in from Houston, Chuka. I appreciate you coming out. I just appreciate all your guys' support. We need to spread this word through our friends and family right now, because operator syndrome is so new to this, and Jim's technology is very new, so we have to get this word spread through our network. And I believe our network is the strongest. Without further ado, here's Trent.
You all hear me in the back okay?
Yes.
All right, I'm not nearly as skilled as our esteemed keynote speaker here at using that mic while I'm talking, so you have to bear with me. Hey, first, before I get started, just to put a finer point on today, I'm dedicating this speech and my presence here to Michael Al and Tim, one of my former soldiers, who unfortunately made the tragic decision to take his own life about 10 days ago. This is really a poignant opportunity for everybody, but for me as well on a personal level to be here today and be with this group and talk about this important issue. So with that, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here today. First time in California, the beautiful Stanford campus in the great state of California, and I'm extremely excited again to be with this group. My name is Trent Upton. I'm an American citizen, independent, principled, and self-determined. I'm fresh off completing my career in the Army, where I just recently retired as a colonel on March 1st, after about 30 days, after almost 30 years of service, half of that about overseas, and a total of 5 years cumulative in combat zones. And I think additionally what I bring to the table today is that recent operational experience. I mean, over the course of my career, I planned, led, executed upwards of 1,000 combat missions. I led the first conventional quick reaction force to go back in Iraq in 2014 when ISIS was on march. And I also led the very first brave combat team in the United States Army to hold the line in the COVID pandemic and deploy and do our mission in spite of all of the chaos that was happening worldwide at that time. But while most of my time, as mentioned, was as an infantry officer, was training and leading close combat forces. Most recently ran the U.S. Army Public Affairs Office at the Pentagon in D.C., which is the nexus of strategic communication and outreach on the global level for our Army. This is my first public engagement out of uniform as a private citizen. As you can tell, I'm really excited to be here. And with all that time in the military, I've also had a lot of experience leading people and units through traumatic events, operational stress control as a leader and just a soldier and a person with my soldiers was always a focus of mine from the very get-go, as well as personal experience in suicide prevention and intervention. And unfortunately, on that intervention side, some of them have been unsuccessful, some have been successful. So when Jim reached out and asked me to be here today, I only had one question, which was, what time is my flight? But as mentioned here, I came out here today to roll up my sleeves with people like you, people who are focused on solutions, not sound bites, pragmatic progress, not performance art, and victory, not victory. I'm excited to share my personal thoughts and perspectives of Dr. Jim and her team. They're very important work. I'd like to really hone in on highlighting why, to me, and hopefully to you, it matters, where it's heading, and a vision of future possibilities. First, why it matters. For over 50 years, the public conversation and narrative about veterans has been shaped by extremes. On one side, the flawless hero. On the other, the damaged veteran who can't function. Neither of those is accurate, and neither of those really helps anyone, especially veterans. It gets in the way of progress. And to be clear, I am not a hero. I have served with a lot. Neither service members nor the veteran population are a monolithic group. And despite the unifying nature of service rooted in the shared values that are instilled in us in our military culture, we come from a diverse background, diverse perspectives, which are reflective of our fellow citizens. And just as mentioned earlier, not all of us have been in direct fire contact with the enemy. Not all of us experience those stressors the same, which I think makes it even more of a complicated situation when we look in terms of assessing and treating and providing proper care to our service members and veterans. And even with those that have been impacted, I would argue it does not suggest a broken person. It's rather someone who has overcome adversity in extremely stressful situations the best they could, and in some cases may need a little bit more focused, nuanced care to get them through that experience and returning to be a functioning member of the community. Emergent brain health research, like Jen's, is already starting to give us a more complete view of the challenges. It shows that those long-term effects of high-intensity service are more complex and not as simple as the black and white of associated with a psychological collapse. Rather, they're more likely an effect of the cumulative effect of factors such as sustained stress, blast exposure, irregular sleep cycles, physical pain, and years of operating at a high level. And I failed to mention earlier, I also have the benefit of going through as an active patient through one of the military's currently active TBI clinics, and I'm happy to share some thoughts on that as well today. Because they are doing their best to do a lot of good things. I had a good experience there. However, I think there is much more room for improvement. I think that's exactly where, as John mentioned, we're going to talk more today, that the capability of NeuroMatch comes into play, especially in that diagnosis portion of it. And also, again, tying this to the broader population, like many other modern day conveniences, GPS in your phone as an example, that were originally spurred by the interest of military application, military readiness, this transfers across the population to help not just service members, veterans, but mom and dad. And I think that's a very important point to continue to hone in on today. Next, where this work is heading. We are in a promising moment. Researchers like Jen and others across this nation have now developed capability that didn't exist even a decade ago. The imaging detection to identify those subtle brain changes from traumatic events, endocrine research and its impacts on overall health and physical fitness, sleep science that connects disrupted rhythms. I will tell you, anybody who's a veteran almost automatically has sleep issues, and that's just due to the demands of the job. So that's something that a hugely impactful factor that we don't think about in terms of how it affects your cognitive abilities. And then, of course, neuroimmune findings in terms of inflammation causing pain, which then cause other changes in the brain and in your neurological system. All this to say, what's different now is the approach, moving away from trying to identify and treat isolated symptoms and more of an integrated health approach, looking at the human body as a system of systems, and therefore having more targeted treatment modalities to address health issues. Lastly, a vision into the possibilities that this work shows for our future, for veterans and the rest of our society. To some degree, science is starting to catch up with a lot of what we know as veterans already instinctively, in that the broken veteran narrative persists because it's simple. It might fit into movies, but it doesn't fit into the reality of people we know. The part that rarely gets attention is that the story of growth through adversity. Growth is not guaranteed, but it's more common than not. And maybe perhaps like other things, real growth is more introspective at its core, more quiet and less promotional. The vast majority of veterans I know are not defined by trauma. They're defined by adaptability. They're defined by determination. They're defined by continuing to contribute to this society, and they're defined by leadership. Technology like NeuroMatch reinforces this, showing that while some have challenges, solutions are on the horizon. So as we share and reflect on the possibilities today and why this work matters, where it's heading, and the vision of the future, I'll leave with this. Work like this shows promise in reshaping the future of veteran care. The studies that you conduct, the treatments you refine, will influence lives for decades. Veterans don't need to be idolized or pitied, just supported and respected like anyone else. And your work is making that possible. To me, hope is not a slogan. It's a result of shared purpose, direction, and commitment. It's a result of unity. It's a result of leadership.
So thank you for joining us today in that shared purpose. Thank you for helping build a unifying future where veterans and people of all walks of life are enabled to grow beyond their hardships. And thank you for your leadership. And I look forward to speaking with you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Trent. Real quick before I introduce our next speaker, I'm going to call a little bit of an audible because we have a guest here. I told you that I played sports my whole life. I grew up in a single mom household with two other brothers, so 3 boys my mom was raising. And to keep us out of trouble, she moved to the foothills of California. And right below us was a little town called Stockton, California, where I spent a lot of my time and where all my family lives today. In fact, my niece, I got her into the Coast Guard, and she did 4 years, and today she is getting her household goods delivered to Stockton, California. So the other day, I was at an event that's gone through, and I met Kevin Lincoln, the 80th mayor of Stockton, California. And he has relinquished that position to run for Congress, the 13th district, I believe. And his office is here to represent Daryl Hopkins. And Daryl also has a story, and I would love for him to just talk for a second and introduce himself. And I just really appreciate you guys being here and supporting us.
Yes, everybody, I really appreciate that. Thanks for inviting us. Fortunately, Kevin will be here today to understand for Congress. Got a lot of people back in the district, but he's very passionate about this. And as Dan was saying, I actually was here at Sanford back in 2023. My father is a veteran of the United States, and he was a CV. Didn't have TBI, but he actually had a brain tumor, service-connected. He was actually out in St. Juan, was handling a lot of old age residents. So I know the great amazing work that Dan's pushing for, you guys are all pushing for, not just in TBI, but better understanding of neurology and veterans. That's a lot of great work. Kevin's very passionate about that. Kevin himself is a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. He's part of HMX 1 up there in DC. So as soon as we get to DC, we'd love to continue working with you guys, especially in the Veterans Committee. And even back when I was in DC, I got to see a library work, all the different methods looking at approach TBI, especially with this technology here, but even with hyperbaric chambers and exploring alternatives like MDMA and other drugs like that that really try to find different approaches to TBI injuries. As we know, it's such a huge issue, not just a drug, but we're thinking backbone and cure, IUDs, concussion injuries like that, but even now the studies coming out, fire pilots, all the constant vibrations, and alcohol pilots as well. So really looking forward to being here, honored to be here. So sad Kevin couldn't make it, but he definitely is with all you guys. And Kevin, give updates. Thank you very much too. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Dale. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Graham Rudd, former Marine Corps.
Thanks. Thank you for having me today. It's really excited to be talking to all of you and appreciate your time. We hear a lot about stats and a lot of issues, and I thought, I'm not a clinician, provide medical advice anymore, but I could tell maybe some of my story because I think that might help frame some of the people that need to hear it most. They say, you have to figure out a problem first. That was one of the hardest things I ever did in my entire military career, was actually go to someone and say, I need help, right? From day one of joining and taught how to do that. And so that was a really hard decision for me to make, and I'm glad that I did it because I'm sitting here today, right now. It's a combination of luck, some determination, huge amount of support from my family, and the fact that I was finally being honest with myself. We had a conversation yesterday. One of the things we said is, when you do admit that, it's the first time you have a conversation with a doctor where you actually admit that you have these problems. I don't drink too much. I don't have pain. All those type of things that you hid for so long are really, really important. So that's really what I want to talk about today. Is, figuring out that you have a problem and seeking care. I think it's a really hard thing for a lot of guys. I think in part too because a lot of the nature of these ailments are very insidious and they're small. When you look at them in individual parts put together, they kind of cascade. And that's what happened for me. I think my medical journey in this regard started with a really bad parachuting accident where I severely injured my shoulder and my back. I did not seek treatment for 3 years. I ended up having to call 911 because I could not walk anymore at like 10 in the morning in my apartment. I will distinctly remember the 911 operator saying, "You sound so young." I was like, yeah, I probably am, from saying, I fell off, I couldn't get up. Taken out, went to the emergency room, got surgery shortly after that, and that really started my journey to, getting a lot worse, essentially. I rehabbed from that, did another deployment. During that deployment, I got severely injured again. And that was my only TBI as a result of enemy fire. Every other one I've experienced was from training or from people putting explosives too close to us and detonating them, which was a problem for a lot of us during breaching. And so after that, my problems really started coalescing. I came back from my deployment with severe PTSD, lots and lots of back pain, sleep issues, and that's what finally pushed me over the edge. I basically hadn't slept in almost 30 days. It was just an hour or two a night, and I finally realized that this is not sustainable. One of the things that had happened in my last deployment was we were actually flying an Afghan helicopter with Afghan pilots. It's a much different experience than flying American motors, and it was a lot crazier. My fear of flying really spiked after that. I would never set foot in a helicopter again my entire life. Coming back into Tampa International, through some severe turbulence, I finally snapped. Something in my head went wrong, and I drove down to the clinic, and I said, I need to talk to somebody. I was a former medic. I knew those guys. I see them all the time. We were joking around. They thought I was joking at first, and I really wasn't. And I remember, so they sent me up to the mental health clinic, and they were like, "Are you going to kill yourself?" I was like, "No, but I really need to talk to someone." "Well, we'll get to you in 30 days. That was the first experience with mental health that I had, and it wasn't good, right? I was like, I need to talk to somebody right now. I'm not going to kill myself, but I need to talk to someone. And luckily, the SOCOM surgeon's office had someone who was willing to talk to me that day. That led me to go to the Polytrauma TBI clinic. I finally got in there about 6 months after my deployment. Looking back, I should have actually left theater when I had my incident, but I didn't. Again, it goes back to the beginning of a problem and masking it. That incident where I was having a panic attack on a flight and where I was finally experiencing all these cascading symptoms overwhelming me started a long time before that, and I masked it, not just for myself, but from the people around me. So that led to a lot of problems that I wasn't addressing. Physical fitness problems versus health problems, something that I wasn't able to separate in my mind either. I think there's a real difference between fitness and health. I didn't understand that for a long time, even though I was a medic, and I went through some pretty advanced medical training about sports medicine and things of that nature. And I myself still didn't have the vocabulary or the knowledge that I was experiencing this cascading set of symptoms. From the pain that I experienced, to the anxiety that I had, to the medication that I was taking that weren't helping. There were also slightly other issues that I had. I wasn't really being honest with myself until I finally couldn't do it anymore. I feel very lucky because I did get treatment that day, and then I got subsequent treatment after that. I had a loving, supportive family. My wife is here today, right now. It's a critical component to my story. But a lot of people don't have that, I see. Former friends and colleagues that have lost touch with a lot of that stuff and aren't being honest with themselves, and it's really hard to reach them. So my hope here is just telling some of my story might help contextualize that for other people and let them admit that these are problems and that it's actually about preserving the force. Right? When I first started in the military, almost no one I did yoga or just talking about this. Now it's very commonplace. I can get acupuncture through the VA, and it's been phenomenal treatment. And so I think that being able to change people's perception of this, be honest and vulnerable, but still be able to execute the mission, is something that's critical. One of the things we talked about yesterday, and I tell soldiers when they first joined our team, is you have to have the emotional maturity to understand when you're injured. Because if you can't take care of that in a pragmatic way, we won't have you on deployment because you're going to be getting surgery. I already had those conversations. So actually, I've been listening to that myself, and it took me a little while to figure that out. But I did. And ultimately, it's still a journey. You have to work at it every day. I think part of the perception problem I had too was disability to me was a number. It wasn't an actual lifestyle yet. And over time, I started realizing that I am actually radically transforming my life to deal with these issues that I have. One of the reasons that I ended up co-founding a company was because I could not work a normal 9 to 5. I was working at a law firm where it was standard to work 80 hours a week. I cannot physically do that anymore. And I had another spinal surgery. And that was a real shift for me as well, because it put in front of me the fact that if I don't take care of myself now, I won't have a family, I won't have a job, I won't accomplish a mission, I won't be here. And so I really did take that seriously, and I've reordered my entire life to do that. It's been very difficult. I've had amazing support from family and friends and a network of people that care about me. A lot of people don't, but the only reason I've been able to be afforded any of those things is because I finally asked for help. I'm not afraid to say anymore that I have PTSD. One thing that I always say to people is, look, if you don't have PTSD after half of the things that you've seen right now, then you really need to talk to somebody, because it's very normal to have a reaction to things that you've seen. You know, I've worked on children who are horribly mutilated for, you know, from explosions or other accidents. Stuff like that sticks with you, and if it doesn't, then you really, really, really need help. If you've lost that ability to have empathy or emotions, that's a real concerning issue for anyone. And so, taking all that together and really being honest with myself, I've had to go on this journey. One thing I guess I would mention as well is that I did actually seek and get treatment through psychedelic medicine, ketamine treatment. And that, to me, was a profound shift in my journey. I've been really struggling to take a holistic look at all the issues I was having and addressing them in a manner that would actually, you know, lead to results. But after that, it really shifted my perception, and I realized that there's two things that I really have to focus on: getting healthy and being there for my family. And it can't be something that's going to be down the road. It can't be something that's going to happen, you know, in a month or two that I get to. It has to start now. I have to be present with my family. I have to take care of the things that are important to keeping my health and fitness aligned. And I think that goes back to it as well, is the divergence of health and fitness. When I was initially admitted into the TBI clinic, I was still passing the SF standards for the physical fitness test. I had the blood work of pre-diabetic. I was in a complete hormone cascade from lack of sleep. And that was also something that finally dawned on me, was there is a real physical component to stress. It is not just in your head, there are physical reactions to it. I remember the doctor saying to me, you have a lot of issues going on. I can't help you with any of them until you start sleeping again. And I started really realizing, man, I have to take this. When I say sleep hygiene, I really mean it. I'm still not good with this. It is a thing that I have to wrestle with every day. I love reading Reddit before I go to sleep. But these are the type of things that I'm having to work on every day. So I guess to sum it all up, I think that awareness is really critical. I hope that by telling some of my story here today, it might inspire other people to maybe ask themselves if they could seek treatment in my cohort and ones to come. And I'm really excited that things like this are being developed. I never in a million years thought something like this would be happening, and seeing it happen so quickly in my lifetime already is really inspirational. So thank you all for having me up here, and I hope this was a helpful talk.
Real quick story on Graham and I, before I introduce the next speaker. Graham and I met on LinkedIn just like Trent and I. The interesting thing about Graham and I grew up next to a kid who had a rough life, kind of like me, and he needed some guidance, and I helped him out a lot. Wish he would have joined the Coast Guard, but the world had a different plan for him. He ended up becoming a Green Beret. He is at 3rd Group right now. He is at E8 there. He runs a group of guys that are true heroes to this country. And he's at the TBI clinic right now, and Graham has been helping him out and been a mentor to him. So it just it really hits home when we start talking to people and we start having these conversations and realize like how we can help each other and who we know. Without further ado, I want to bring up our honored guest and why we're here today, Dr. Jim Lee.
Thank you very much, Dan, for the introduction and for having this event with us here today. The heroes we're sitting in front of, I've only seen all of you in movies before. I had the idea of, yes, we have heroes who's protecting the country and doing all the good things, but really being able to be here with you and also engage you in a way that what I've been working on might do something for you. It's really moving, heartwarming, and it's an honor, it's a pure honor to be with all of you. And thank you for coming and speaking with us today. I originally am trained as an electrical engineer. I grew up in South Korea. I trained as an electrical engineer, went to undergrad in engineering, and then I came to Stanford to study electrical engineering, and that was what I did my PhD in. The reason why I got into doing brain research was because my grandmother had a stroke around the time I finished my PhD. I was her first granddaughter, and she raised me in a lot of different ways, and she was so excited about me getting a PhD, and we were gonna celebrate, but then right as I was finishing, she had a stroke, and she became disabled, and she couldn't walk anymore. And so, I mean, I remember even thinking at the Stanford Memorial Church, I was thinking about that. If I had worked a little bit harder and then graduated a little bit early, I might have been able to help her. I mean, at least have her see me graduate, but then that didn't happen, and it really made me, it had a profound effect on me, to the point that I switched my research from doing imaging research, and then I just completely switched to looking into brain disorders. 15 years later, we're here now where I have worked on various technology to be able to address brain disorders, and the fact that this might have an impact on the heroes of our country, I am very honored, and I hope we can move forward as a community to really bring this benefit to all of you. I want to start by talking a little bit about some of the work that I've done and what we are going to do going into the future. As introduced, I am a professor at Stanford. A lot of the work that we have done comes from the basic science research that I did in my lab. And then academic organizations, what you do is you do the research and you publish papers, but that's not where I wanted to go. I really wanted to provide a solution. And so about 10 years ago, when I started to see that this is the way that the brain signal flows through your brain, and you need to be able to visualize it, and I think this is the way we have to deliver it to the patients. So about 10 years ago, I started the company, Elvis, and that is what is now delivering some of the solutions that we're going to talk about. And then last year, we got a lot of the technology that we were developing FDA cleared, and it's ready for deployment towards the end of last year. And so then we started testing it with various patients. And when we did that, we saw that, now we can really start to make leaps in ways that we couldn't really think about before. And so we wanted to deliver that solution fast. And to do that, we also started the Rivera Brain Health Institute. And today is the first time we're opening up the Institute to have all of you experience what it will be like. And this work, as I mentioned, has been work that we've published in scientific journals over the past few years. And also, it has been heavily supported by the government, where NSF and NIH has put a lot of money into supporting this. And so I was an electrical engineer from outside the field. I came into neuroscience. Who is she? And so there was a lot of struggle trying to convey this message of I am using this engineering approach to try to address these brain disorders. And everybody from different disciplines have different ideas of how problems should be solved. And it was a big challenge. But I'm very thankful that the government actually gave me these opportunities through funding where I was able to stick to this research for the past 15 years. And the main thesis of my research has been that you have to be able to see how the brain works. If you can't see, you can't solve problems. You know, Graham shared his experience about having to acknowledge the problem first. You know, we have lots of coping mechanisms, we have approaches that we take in order to perhaps go through all the difficulty in life, but also pretend like, oh, we don't really have a problem. And so having that issue, there's two things that are important. we need to be able to objectively see where the problems are. And once we can see the problem, it's also an addressable problem, so you don't really have to think about, I don't really want to know I have that problem. When you have a cold, a virus infection, you're not like, oh, I'm in denial. Okay, there's a test, you have a problem, here's some antiviral, antibacterial medication, let's deal with it. And so the main problem that I saw when I came into trying to understand addressing brain disorders is that there's no way to see what the problem is. The main way that the brain problem was being diagnosed was through surveys, trying to see if, are you remembering things okay? Are you feeling okay? Are you sleeping okay? Which, if that's the way you have to diagnose it, to use an analogy, it would be like, your car is not running and you go to the shop and it's like, is your car running optimally? Is it running the way it should? I don't know. Sometimes it makes sounds, but it's unclear. But in order to really address the problem, you have to see the problem. And you have to see where the problem is in order to address it. With my work, trying to visualize all the problems in the brain, one of the questions I received a lot throughout the research career was, okay, seeing is fine, but what are you going to do with seeing? Actually, if you know what the problem is, seeing the problem and solving the problem is the same thing. If you know your car is not running optimally because your engine oil is low, that means you have to fill the engine oil. The problem identification is the beginning of all solutions. And so what I thought was the most important aspect of addressing brain disorders in general was to see which part of the brain communicating with which other part is having issues, and if you can directly visualize that, you'll know what the problem that is occurring is, and then you can address it. And that effort throughout the years has been supported through various ways to translate the technology from the lab into actual practical applications. And my segue into understanding veterans need help and everything came from meeting all of you in the audience, and Altaf in particular was the first one who visited our office, and he said I could share his video, so here it is. And in general, starting with Altaf, what I've seen with veterans is that there's a lot of paperwork from years of visits to the hospitals that says, I've done this test, that test, and all these other tests. But the common theme in the test result is all quantitative tests are normal, despite the fact that there are problems. It's not because there's not a problem, but it's because there is no test that can detect the problem. And so all quantitative tests are normal. The only thing that shows up as problematic is survey results. And it has many implications there. First of all, you can't figure out what the problem is exactly. And second, you can also be in a position where I have to prove that I have a problem. Instead of being understood and taken care of, you're put in a position where, like, he said, she said, like, are you really having a problem or are you faking it? And so that alone can be a huge problem, let alone being able to diagnose accurately and then addressing it. And so here is Altaf and Dan when we first met, and I think the sound is not playing here right now, but he's saying he's very excited to know what I was and so, like I said, one of the main approaches that I decided to take, which was controversial and is still, like, people are still learning about what that means, but the approach that I thought we should take was kind of have a way of understanding the signal flow, visualizing it, seeing what it is, and one way to say it is like making a digital twin of the brain. And so to do that, we have put lots of effort throughout the years, and just to go through some of the things that we looked at, because I was looking at the brain as a whole system. Most biological scientists look at a certain portion of the thing, but I wanted to understand the whole system, and so we didn't really focus on one particular disease. we focused on how does the system work overall and how does the communication occur, where it's not like we were studying everything all at the same time, it's more that that fundamental problem addresses all the different brain disorders. And so we looked at epilepsy, sleep, anxiety disorder, emotional control, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, autism, stroke, all of which converges onto understanding how we can take data and then translate it into brain modeling. And just to highlight what we have just published in 2026 February, last month, we figured out, for example, how the brain communicates in order to generate empathy. And so, something like empathy, or not just our limb control or memory, but things like empathy is also a function of your brain. And so when this particular circuit function is reduced, you lose empathy. When that circuit function is enhanced, sometimes you have more than what might be appropriate for what we're used to in most cultural settings. And so this particular work, we've done these animal studies in the lab to figure out exactly which neuron, which receptor talks to what and generates what type of signal in order to make this happen. And I'm emphasizing this because taking something like this and putting it into clinical practice has a long path, but the way we have been able to draw the insight over the past 15 years, we have already taken what we just published and then put it into a framework where we're now already testing it in people, and that is what we've done with, for example, like the test that we did with the veterans recently. And luckily, with our technology now starting to get deployed, we have also been selected as a finalist for the Edison Award. And the technology, all medical technology also needs to go through lots of different steps to take form into seeing the patients. And what we've done actually over the past 10 plus years, 10, 12 years, is starting with the research, we started taking it into a form that can be translated into the clinic. And then after we do all the clinical testing and everything, we have to also go through FDA, and we have cleared 3 FDA process. We're also cleared for use in South Korea. We've done like ISO certification. We've gotten new insurance codes, and we're also now working on various approvals in other countries and going through FedRAMP processes for government use. And so it's no easy task. It wasn't just the science that had to be addressed. But the important thing is we're now there where everything is all falling into place. And so our solution is called NeuroMatch. What NeuroMatch stands for is we're going to match your neuro state with your diagnosis and treatment. That's what the name NeuroMatch refers to. And this work, as I mentioned earlier, was also supported by a lot of the Stanford Translational Program, which is part of the campus that you are sitting in here today with us. And so what this technology does is it's actually it does 2 things. It has taken the process of analyzing your brain wave with the insight of what we've done research for the past 15 years. It took the information and it allows you to look at the brain networks associated with each individual. That technology is enabled within the solution. Also, the process of looking at your brainwave is something that is limited to big clinics in limited settings with very specialized staff right now. And so most people don't have access to it unless you're very, very sick and you're waiting for 6 months or a year. But we fully automated it in an all-in-one platform, which allows us to very easily deploy it into harsh environments or environments with limited resources. And so it's made very deployable, and also it brings in these new technology. And so now that we have a very deployable way to look at how your brain communicates, what we can do now is instead of just waiting for things to happen where you really realize now you have to turn around your whole life, you can start to do regular health health checkups to see what your brain status is like. You can also do, once you figure out that there are some problems, you need to do some more detailed diagnosis. And then, once you do the diagnosis, like I told you about in the car analogy, the diagnosis itself is linked directly to the treatment. It's actionable information. It's not just saying you have a problem. We're telling you exactly what the problem is. And so these are the options for the action. And so we can now think of this as something, okay, our brain is under attack due to many things. It's not just our heroes, but also all of us, all these cell phones that constantly take our attention, the digital media. These are all sources where your brain is under attack. What we have to do now is to take the aspect of taking care of your own brain health into your own hands. And so bringing back the point of finding treatments with the accurate diagnosis that is now enabled is you can do, once you can visualize things, this is actually data from a real patient, and once you identify where the problem is, you can select from currently existing treatment to best optimally address this problem. You can also design new treatments based on what you see. Okay, there's a large population of people who have this type of problem, so let's design a treatment that can really custom fit them. And then also, once you have these problems identified, the clinical trials. Most of the new drugs or new therapy that come online takes like decades for it to go through trials, and then it fails. And then it's like, what do you do next? It takes billions of dollars to just run through one drug trial, for example. But with this type of technology, what we can do is do this in an expedited way with very clear knowledge where it's this design problem instead of expeditions, trying to see what the solutions are. And you can also then take that to use it for diagnosis for a particular treatment that has been developed to match it with the patient population. And so the brain healthcare is enabled by NeuroMatch in two different ways. One is increasing access. The other is really giving the information you need. There is a large population within our military hero group of people who are having issues, but it's not just that group. In the general population, we see, this is what the literature says, like very large portion of the population has some form of brain disorder, including sleep problems. But when we actually took this technology and started scanning people, what we saw was that this is an underestimate. Because you can't really see the problem, it's underestimated. But once you see the problem, it's like, this is just a rough estimate on my part. When I scan people above 40-ish, more than half seem to have some sort of problem. It's not, life-threatening necessarily, but there is a problem. And above 60-ish, we see like almost everybody has some form of problem. And above 70, we kind of see that, about half of the population is going through the cognitive decline. That might lead to Alzheimer's. And so this is a much larger problem that there is, and what this technology that now integrates the whole process and automates it does is it also makes for easy access for different patients. And so this type of process, even in the most classical form, was something that was limited to large hospitals where you have to wait. Even if you're a seriously ill patient, you have to wait. That means most of you will not have any access to it. But now, with this technology, we can really liberate access. Also, the current standard of care, as mentioned, are not actionable. Even if you get this type of care that's currently available, you will get qualitative assessments, even on these quantitative tests. And so this particular patient's case, it's saying that there is clearly a problem. But it's a qualitative description that says there is a problem, which is not actionable. But what we can do now with NeuroMatch is give you a map of where the problem is. And so this patient actually had a tumor resection on one side of the brain, and that led to abnormal activity building over time. And so that activity, depending on the level of its activity going up and down, resulted in different symptoms. But with all the current standard of care, that was not addressable for a long time, decades. But now that we have this sort of information, we can act on it. I actually see where the main hub of all the problem is, for example, in this patient's case. And also, going back to some PTSD examples, like PTSD is diagnosed like this at this point, where you're just going through questionnaires. It's what you said. And, you know, there are many problems with that. Proving that you actually have a problem is one problem. Doctor knowing what the problem is another problem, and this is not actionable. But, you know, this same subject, in this case, when we use NeuroMatch to scan, what we have found is following. The symptoms, the main symptoms that was told was that there's sudden occasional loss of memory, there's difficulty finding words, and then there's inability to feel emotions. And what we see in this NeuroMatch diagnosis is that here there is network disruption in areas that are mainly involving language and memory. And so when this type of activity is enhanced, it's very conceivable that that is what's leading to difficulty with memory and then finding words. And we now have also in our pipeline development of looking at mild cognitive impairment. And, you know, when somebody complains about memory, for example, you might think, oh, are they having like these, you know, Alzheimer's type development? The answer is no for this subject, where likelihood is close to zero. But it's saying that we're now able to distinguish these different types of problems that are occurring. And also translating the research that we just published in February. We looked at the population parameters of whether we can look at these ability to mirror emotions. And then what we found is that, you know, compared to the average, it was much lower, which means that your brain injury is leading to your inability to really mirror the other person's emotion, which does lead to problems with that the subject was actually complaining about. And so now these things don't have to be where you go through years of tests. I mean, it's not just inconvenience from the patient's perspective. Think about the money that's wasted in the system. There's so many people involved in delivering this care that's not doing anything. But now that we have a way to really see it, we can start to address it, make actionable plans with much less process involved. And this, another example I want to bring is on a case where we have addressed the problem on a patient that was very seriously ill. This patient had uncontrollable seizures. And then what they've done, because none of the drugs were working, it was not a good candidate for even like the section of the brain when they have these uncontrollable events. And so they put in a new device into the temporal lobe of the patient where the blue arrows are. And these locations were identified after months of evaluation. You do like the surveys, you do the video recordings, measure EEG, measure MRI, measure PET, and do all kinds of things. And then also, you know, drill through your skull to put electrodes into the brain and figure out where the problem might be. But despite that, the conclusion was to put it in those two blue locations. And then, we won't be having this conversation without work, but it didn't work. And the patient was complaining, I'm like, let's take this out right away. I'm like so unhappy that this device was implanted in my head and it's not working. But when we investigated what the problem might have been for this patient, we found that this red dotted region is actually where the most important problem is for this patient. And then there was a wrong targeting of the blue region for this patient, which is why it wasn't working. It's an invasive surgery that was already done. We're not going to change the surgery, change the device location based on that. But what we could do was, because this was a neuromodulation device that had multiple electrodes inside, we could change the way the current pattern is played out, and so that we can increase the influence zone from the blue circle region to like a larger region, which will have more influence on the red zone. And that actually resulted in positive outcome for the patient. And so the patient went from, let's take this out right away, to, okay, immediately after we switched the parameters, you know, instead of 7 a month, I'm seeing reduction for my self-reported score is 4 a month. And then also, the stimulation based assessment. So once we have the ability to look at what the problem is, but we can also monitor the outcome of therapy. And when we monitor the outcome, without the stimulation of their new parameter, there was like thousands of events that were abnormal. But then now, on the first day, it was reduced to 500, the second day, it was reduced to 300. And so it is clear that this type of approach is necessary in order to address this problem that is now just being, circulated around in different ways. And the way we are now starting to deploy this solution is through Nuvera and NeuroMatch. NeuroMatch is the technology that we developed. Nuvera will be the way we also deploy. And we have a plan to have this hub and spoke model. So in the afternoon, you'll be visiting the Nuvera clinic. So the Nuvera clinic, hub clinics, the first one being in Palo Alto will be created, where that clinic will have care and support within the clinic, but also this clinic will support other existing systems. And so like therapists, we can work with primary care physician's office. One of the primary care physicians who will be working with us is here today with us, Dr. Khan. And we have other therapists we are now engaging with the veterans group that will be working together. And we also will engage the existing hospital systems where we will provide professional diagnostic services that might help in their current surgical practices, for example. But within our Nuvera PSI, what we'll do health checkups, professional diagnostics, and also with the new insurance, we will provide support to the existing clinics, and then we will directly provide them neuromodulation treatments, non-invasive treatments. And if it so happens that they need more intensive surgical care, we will refer them to large hospitals. Or if they just need to go back to their community and engage with their therapist or primary care after the treatment, we will also work with them that way. So with that, I would like to end, and we will give you a demo later in the afternoon. And please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Jen's doing amazing work. We're gonna roll into a panel here, but before that, I just wanna say a few things. After I retired from the Coast Guard, I got accepted into a program that helps special operators transition out of the military. There's over 3,000 members, and I'm the only Coast Guard member. It was a little hard for me. I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I was around Green Berets and SEALs, and I've never been blown up, and I've never been shot out by the enemy. And so, to me, I didn't think that I had any issues. But those Navy SEALs changed my mind, and that's why I'm here today. And then furthermore, after that, I went to a little school called the University of Southern California. Got my MBA there, and that's where I went Althoff. And I know that I've never attended Stanford, but I love USC, and I'm proud to be alumni from there. And I'm proud to be here, and I would love to invite my guests up for this panel. I'd love to invite my mentor up for this panel. Yes. So they're going to all introduce themselves a little bit, but yeah, we're just going to get into this, and we're going to talk about operator syndrome. We're going to unfold this mystery a little bit. On that note, I was saying that I have never experienced those things, but what I have done is I've shot millions of rounds downrange. I've been on helicopters, I've jumped out of helicopters, I've been on boats, I've jumped onto Marco subs, I've done a lot of things. And I didn't know that was a big deal, but when I started looking into it, whole body vibration degrades your brain. So, how many hours were you on that high-speed boat chasing drug dealers, narco terrorists and things like that? And how many rounds were you putting down range in preparation to be qualified to do those things? So that has a big effect on everything. And so I just want to kind of unfold the operator syndrome. I want to talk about the new technology, and I want to talk about our call to action, because that's the most important part after this, is how we move forward after this conference and what kind of things are we going to accomplish together to solve this issue and control the narrative of this new syndrome, because we don't want to be controlled by anybody else, like maybe PTSD or things like that, because these guys aren't broken, I'm not broken. Everybody has a veteran in their lives. It might be their brother, their son, their grandfather. And I just want to, I know these guys got out of the military and they just want to be active members of the community, and we want to just be just like everybody else. And that's why we're here today. So I'm going to hand it over to my mentor, Simon Gunazis, and we're going to take this off.
Thank you. Welcome to Stanford. This is wonderful. I have a question to make this a little interactive, okay, for the thousands in the audience here today. Jane Goodall, Andy Grove, Reed Hastings, Peter Thiel, Steve Jobs, and Elon Musk, what do they all have in common? First person to answer it, I will buy them dinner tonight. Dr. Lee. Close. They all spoke in the Stanford faculty venue. So we're here with those people, okay? And some of them aren't around, but I thought that was pretty cool. Just as a little interesting fact. I've represented Dr. Jin Lee for several years now. I own a public relations firm. A lot of you have come to our conferences, Impact, all around the world, most recently in Washington, D.C. I'm very humbled to have so many of my friends, John and others, that are veterans, but also have served as elected officials. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is around the admin in Washington. It's clear that I have a lot of relationships from the White House, the Cabinet, the Senate, and Congress. And recently we've been taking great work like this and the innovation that's happening here in America and sharing it with those that are running our country and have access to that power. And what Dr. Lee is doing and this topic is so, so important. And we're going to take this all the way up to Capitol Hill. We're going to share this with as many elected officials and those that can continue to invest. Not only do I see this as a great benefit to the veteran and military community, a lot of people know me because of my friendship with Palmer Luckey. He has really opened my eyes to the whole defense world and the thousands, the millions of people that have served and the different aspects of service, the pre-service, the current service, the combat side, the technical side, the veteran side, and then all that comes with it after service. And today's topic, I can't think of anything more important. And it's such an honor to be in your presence and to facilitate this Q&A with you today. And I think hopefully the findings from today we can take back to our legislatures as well as the venture capital community, because I can't think of anything more important to support. And, I also look at the drug discovery costs. And, recently I've been hanging out with this guy, Nick Shirley. He's been doing a great job at exposing fraud in California. I can't think of an industry that has more fraud written on it and around it than the healthcare industry. And if you look at just the cost, what you were talking about, billions of dollars. I have a friend right now who's getting cancer chemotherapy treatment in Germany because they've been able to fast track localized chemotherapy as opposed to just totally poisoning your body. And I've been talking to him through the whole process, and there's really no side effects other than he's just sleeping more. And so, that's a real life example. But here's another one, right? In the work that Jen is doing in her lab here at Stanford, and this digital twin that's being done through artificial intelligence and mapping the brain and creating these real-time results. The drug discovery process and the cost of that can be cut, probably 90%. And these are the types of innovations that artificial intelligence and the modernization that's being born here at Stanford and other universities and other laboratories is helping us advance. I just wish government can move at the same speed. And And that's the type of stuff that Palmer, myself, and others, and a lot of you who were at my conference at the Hay Adams are advocating to our government leaders. It is a partnership, and I do think that in this administration, we have a shot at moving the needle forward. Going to a few of the questions that we've prepared today for our panel, and I'll just show this out there, and you guys maybe just raise your hand. Daniel will give the microphone, and we'll go from there. So how many conditions affecting veterans today remain invisible simply because we haven't had the tools to see them clearly? Anyone want to take that one?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. Visible still. The one thing that I feel like I have the most surprise when I talk to other veterans, especially ones that are getting out, is we have a ton of resources for non-narcotic pain treatment. I think this is one of the examples as well. There's pain clinics in all local VAs, and most of the guys I talk to, no idea that it exists. They also have never really addressed that fundamental underlying low level but constant pain, which I think is a direct contributing factor to a lot of the other issues.
On that note, another little fact about the DHS is we really don't know about the TBI clinics. We get left out on a lot of things. I didn't know that there was TBI clinics until after I retired. So, we have to fix that and make that a better thing.
My next question, what changes when technology like MirrorMatch allows us to actually visualize brain function and identify patterns we couldn't detect before? Anyone want to take that? I know it's a little bit on the technical. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so I would say with the technology, it blew my mind back. I remember when Jim scanned my brain and showed me the visualization. In about a 2-hour session, I got more answers about what was going on in my head than almost 7 years to do with the VA. It's not to put the VA down, it's just that the entire approach to veteran care medicine, I think it's very flawed. It's based on really the Civil War model when the VA was actually established. It was right after the Civil War. And it just fundamentally cannot address all the complicated situations that veterans deal with. I mean, you're talking about, like Dan was mentioning, you have vehicle exposure, right, with the helicopters, the boats. Now we have radar exposure with radio frequencies, you have blast exposures, you have other chemical exposures, burn pits. So there's a lot of complicated situations going on that not only impact you physically, but mentally. And I'm not even talking about the traumatic piece of this, right? That's all that I just mentioned right there can be just in training. Now actually do it live and where you're actually in traumatic situations, life-threatening situations. There's a whole level of, I think, understanding that we're missing. So being able to visually see what was going on in my head while I was going through the treatment with Jen, and I was getting those, she asked me where my triggers, where my PTS triggers. It's like, well, it's typically like gunfire or explosions. And actually seeing, okay, well, this is what my brain does when I get triggered. This is why it's happening. When I lose my memory, when I'm out somewhere and I forget where I'm at, this is what's happening. And you probably relate to this, like, if I go to the doctor and I have a foot issue, they can x-ray my foot, they can actually map, like, hey, my heel is off and it's impacting my hip, and now it's impacting my back, right? What do you do for the brain, right? I can't sleep, or I don't feel good. Well, okay, this is what we think it might be. Now I can actually see it. Well, look, your brain is actually not firing here. So this is what we need. This is the treatment for that, right? So bringing that visualization is huge. It makes a mental, emotional issue almost like a physical issue the way we treat it. So I think this is transformational technology.
Along those lines, yeah, please continue.
As a psychotherapist, I can say that a lot of times when clients are coming in, I'm relying closely on self-reporting. So there's this reliance on me to use my knowledge and try to come up with what the diagnosis is and to help name things and explain things. And I really feel like a technology like this could really accelerate what I do, because this is something that you're visually seeing and can name and can talk about. And then from there, we can talk about what treatment can look like. I do think that approaching this more holistically is really important. So, so getting the data and having information and being on the same page with each other is one thing, and then also having conversations and really talking about how to implement the information that we have, not just individually, but together. And I think that's why today is so important, because we're starting the conversation of what it looks like to bring everybody together. This is not just a veteran issue, this is our issue. And when we are able to prop them up and give them the respect and the services that they deserve, I really think that it could have a really great impact on our community, and we're aiming for the country. So all that to say, that's my thoughts on the integrative approach to language and therapy and this technology.
And just real quick, I thought it was very interesting because I was the second person that had a brain scan, and Jen asked the question. She goes through it. It's very methodical and laid out. And at the very end, I'm getting my brain scan, and she's like, she's actually seen it. And she goes, "Do you have numb toes or fingers?" And I was like, "Yep." And she's like, "Oh, that's right here." How many of you have numb toes and fingers? Raise your hand if you've been in the military. And I know Trent raised his hand.
And what does that cost from? Just curious.
That's what the research I hope is gonna unfold here. I think maybe Jen can talk about that a little bit more, but there's little things of this new syndrome that affect you neurologically. So the overpressure and the vibrations degrade your brain, make you tense your jaw. Your jaw is your mandible. You lose some of the cartilage in your ears, and all those things over the years are just constant. Because when you go to shoot all the time, when you're on a boat, it's the same thing. So all those jaw clenches over time have changed. In fact, personal story, but my front teeth were pushed out of my mouth because of the over clenching. So I had surgery, multiple surgeries to fix that.
Thank you. And along the lines of what you were just saying on the integrative side, because there's a lot of ethical questions on subjectivity as it comes to diagnostics. So how do we begin to rethink brain health when diagnostics move from subjective symptoms to objective, measurable data? Anyone want to take that one?
I think it would allow us to I think it would allow us to help see what a preventative measure might be. So wouldn't it be amazing if our veterans didn't have to go through the sleep issues and the stress and everything that goes along with operator syndrome? So if we can identify a specific issue and how it's mapped and how to treat it, then maybe it'll allow us on the front end to figure out how is it preventable and what can we do to save our servicemen and women and save a lot of money on the back end.
I think this is what I'm learning, is just being able to listen to the different perceptions and knowledge that we each carry, because the thought process that I go through is sometimes when I'm in a room with somebody, I'm really getting to know the person, and diagnosing is really important in our field, obviously, but I feel like having actual data and information on what's going on, but then also being able to tweak the treatment to individual experiences as well. So there's a level of understanding the broader impacts and be able to resonate with one another. And then there's the subjective part of getting to know the person for who they are, and being able to combine that together. So there's a level of community coming together, but also respecting that we each have our own story. So there's kind of, to me, it's a combination of both. And that is what I mean by accelerating healing and what we do, by having both and not just the subjective.
And tying into Al, what you were saying, are we fully understanding the scope of what veterans are experiencing, or do we need to listen more closely and gather better data?
Yeah, 100% need to gather better data. I'll give you a personal example. I experienced my first TBI in 2006, the training scenario. There was no, prior to me coming into the military, they had no real record of what my brain health was or what my body health was prior to me becoming a mess. And so in 2006, when I got my brain injury, it was basically like, I went and told somebody, hey, I feel a little concussed, I don't know do I need to document this? And, our medical foreman was like, yeah, I'll just say that you had a headache, that's it. So that's the data point that they're using. I had a headache in 2006. I was literally 3 feet away from 4 pounds of composition B that blew up right next to my face. And headache is what that quantitative analysis is, right? So when the VA is looking at my record, they say, oh, well, you had a headache in 2006. Well, it doesn't seem that significant, right? Imagine if we actually did proper, NFL concussion protocols, right? It's like, well, you're just right next to a class. Maybe we should sit you down. Maybe we should, strap you to something and see what's going on in your head and actually have real data of like what the impact was, what happened. And then I think what's really beneficial for this as well too, especially when we talk about operator syndrome, we're really talking about success with concussive events over time. How do you really visualize that or view that if you don't have solid data points, consistent data points across, the life of a service member in service? And one of the unique things about global war and terrorism veterans, GWAT veterans, is no time in our country's history have we been in, 20 plus years of consistent combat warfare. Right. So this entire, 2 generations of service members have been experiencing this. I came in 2000 before 9/11 even happened. I got out in 2021. So the majority of my adult life, I've been exposed to certain things. So I guarantee you the way my brain looked in 2000, it's completely different now due to a lot of external factors. So that data, I think, is really valuable to understand how a veteran's brain health is changing over time.
Great, just a few more questions. So what would it look like to build a study that truly reflects the lived experiences of veterans?
I was going to just say something on a program called OPSET, or ONSET, whatever you want to call it. It's a monitoring program for operational people, but it doesn't do the right things because it's lacking some visual aids. And this is where NeuroMatch and Jim could actually change the whole trajectory of our armed forces. Because if we had an early monitoring baseline, we had exposure tracking and reassessments, we could start to rotate our service members out of position. What I mean by that is you, as a pilot, you have so many flight hours. You can only be so many flight hours a month, a year, and then you're back. That's how it should be in the military, and you can go on a rotation. It would save a lot of service members, and it's just good for the overall organization because it's going to keep everybody sharp and healthy and a good warfighter or guardian for this country.
How can we encourage more veterans to participate in research that could shape the future of diagnosis and treatment?
I think really it's getting people to understand that your brain and your nervous system health is just like any other part of your body. Like if you broke your leg, you can go to the doctor. And so I think something like this, where you could actually show someone like we can see something that's wrong, might be a real trigger, not just for them, but I think more importantly for the command structure. Because it's not just a headache, it's like, this is a real symptom that's happening. We really need to address this. If you want to talk about force preservation, rotating people out after an event like that might be better for them, of course, their family as well. So anything that you can really do to help explain to people that this is just as physical as it is mental.
Actually, I can, yeah.
Please go.
I just wanted to bring up the point around, numbers also tell a story, and we need the numbers to be able to identify what Dr. Jim was saying, what the actual problem is, and that's why it's important for us to all come together, because in my mind, I'm coming with wanting to ask questions and get to know people on a personal level. So by combining, I just want to emphasize that by combining all of the skill sets that we have in this room together, I think that's really where being able to tell stories and get the word out is important. Every person in the room is important to help make that happen.
Thank you. So when we look at, you had your brain scan, we've done it, you've done it. How do we scale this? And scale is what's going to be needed to really make impact. So what level of investment is needed to properly study and address these conditions at a much larger volume and scale?
I've done a lot of research on this. Yeah, just for, to scale, I think what's important right now is to start a research group. We have to get veterans to volunteer to have brain scans and collect data on this. And then we also have to, we know that the DOW and DHS adopt technology slowly. We know this. So how do we overcome this? Well, we have to engage with our partners like DIU. We have to engage with our partners throughout our networks. And we also need to come up with other solutions like CRADA. So CRADA is an ability to do research through your product with the government, and there's no really backlash to anything like that. So I think that more companies like this need to enter CRADAs, and that's how you really get to scale through government right now.
One last question. As we uncover meaningful findings, how do we ensure that the results are shared broadly to benefit the entire veteran community?
Yes, great question. I think, engagements like this are great because we have, a direct line of community. We get to share our stories. I think also, you hit it on the head earlier with the public-private partnership. And that really has to happen in organizations like the Hunt Foundation that we attend. We're part of other organizations, Wounded Warrior, Center of the Intrepid. I mean, these are things that need to get out there. What I find remarkable, though, is that there is always a lot of emphasis on the veteran community, and I appreciate that as a veteran, but there are significant other portions of the population that can benefit from all this stuff as well. First responders is a great example, but I mean, we think about anybody in skilled trades, right? Cement layers, pipe layers, construction guys, they're having these, TBI events, or falling from high floors, hitting the ground. Things are falling on them. There's vibration, around generators, jackhammers. So there's a big segment of the population that can probably benefit from all of this. And I think the more we build that bridge between the veteran community and other pockets of the greater civilian population, the better all of us are going to benefit, because none of this stuff that we talk about is limited to just us. We are, I think, the benefit we have is we're probably the most visible aspect of the population that suffers from this stuff. But there's a big group of just everyday regular citizens who deal with these same issues who could benefit from all this. So I think having these dialogues is super important.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to kind of tack on to what Alice said, I think the first responder community could definitely benefit from partnerships through conferences. There are various organizations, like Arizona has the Arizona 100 Club. I think Illinois has one as well. They deal a lot with like peer support, mental health. When I found out that I was going to be at this conference, I spoke with a lot of my former colleagues and first responder friends, and nobody had ever heard of operator syndrome. And I think there's a lot of parallels between this and PTSD, and I know we're trying to differentiate between the two. And I think we'll start seeing a lot more in the first responder community, and almost provide a sense of relief that there may be something out there that can help them. They may have a diagnosis, and they may have a way to help fix it.
Great. Well, thank you so much. What a great, diverse panel. I'm in marketing, I'm in public relations, so I could think of at least 12, 13, 14 different white papers we could write from that. This is really new stuff. Pretty soon, Dr. Lee will be visiting my friend, Dr. Oz, up in Washington. He's the admin for CMS. This is the type of real world application where the public-private sector can work hand in hand. And you guys are all contributing to that. And let me just say, Dr. Lee, it's been an absolute honor to serve you and to facilitate. If you don't know her, she's a killer. I don't think she sleeps. Everyone says, you don't sleep, Steve. I'm like, well, I actually do, like REM cycles. No way. And it takes that kind of leadership to push this sort of thing through. Leadership is action. It's not a position. You never know, founder, CEO, chair. She's so humble. She's so inviting. She's multicultural. She attracts everyone I introduce her to. I have a pretty big network, I've been told. Everyone loves Dr. Lee, everybody loves her. And she's so humble. She took me to her lab, okay? Like my lab is like a little kit I got from Amazon. Her lab has like people in it with coats that says Dr. Lee's lab. It was awesome. If you haven't had an opportunity to tour it, I highly recommend it. It's one of the most beautiful parts of this incredible university. It's been my honor to serve as your facilitator today, so I'll turn it back over to Daniel. Okay.
Thanks, Simone. I'm just gonna wrap it up by saying, kind of, mimic Simone there. I'm very blessed to have been introduced to Dr. Jen Lee. She's shown some real care to a perfect stranger. Some things don't, when you're planning events, you start to get those anxieties and you go back and forth, but all I can say is I'm always here to support her. I'm gonna always provide my network to support her. She's doing great things. We need to make the invisible visible, and we need to heal our veterans and heal our country. And I hope that you guys get to mingle with some of my friends that are gonna come to the clinic as a Coast Guard representation here.
Sorry to interrupt. We have breaking news. Dr. Kung is here. When Jen speaks, I have to just follow her lead, okay? So we're gonna have Dr. Kung come up here for a minute to just share some insights and we're very grateful that you were able to come out here and do this with you.
Well, actually, I was not planning to be here, and then actually, I just came back from Kenya mission trip over the weekend. I just came back and trying to adjust. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and then I fly in last night, almost midnight, and then I slept a few hours and I'm here. But it is very honored to be here. Actually, everybody talked about this faculty. This stage was Steve Jobs and all those famous people were here, and I was amazed to see that. Wow, this is the place. I took a picture all the time. It's beautiful. But as the general also mentioned, and I think this technology is milestone, game changer, mercury, penicillin, all those, he mentioned. I agree with you, and I think that is a totally different game changer. That's what's happening. It's a small group, but when I saw this technology in December, one of my patients suffered from end-stage stomach cancer. He has been treated with multiple chemotherapy, radiation, every treatment, and suddenly his migration, suddenly he starts to go pain all over, right? You cannot explain from the around the waistline and the brain and everywhere he's suffering. So I sent him all kinds of medical tests and expertise, and we couldn't find the answers. And then he struggled, and then he found Dr. Lee's, technology and idea. And then she happened to be in Atlanta, Georgia conference and exhibition of all those teams were there. So first part of December, and then Dr. Lee and the whole team came over to my office, and I made an arrangement with my patient. So he was able to have the test with the helmet he was on. And then instantly I was able to see all the diagnostic activities. And then I talked with Dr. Lee 5-10 minutes, and I understood right away, it is a totally game change. And then I think that as I fully understand here is brain health, military blood, veterans brain health. The other group who has a really most stressful condition as a group, physically, mentally, emotionally, everything were happening to them, all the damage, everything's there, but current medical system, as I know, I spent more than 40 years in medical field. These are one of the toughest subjects. We cannot help it. I can give you some antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication, some pain medication. Everything we do, it's not going to work. And all the tests we do, as she showed, that everything's normal. So it's amazing PTSD is diagnosed by only survey. You question all those things. Well, you have some, you don't have it, whatever. But after that, what can you do? There's not much medication. So I'm so happy and excited to see that this kind of activity with her, in technology she has it, and that can be applied to the most important military veteran groups. I was so excited, and that's it, this is it. So I saw the December, and I met her, and in January, I said, I'm on, I wanna do something, and then she offered me to open up New Era Express Clinic. So January, I said, I ordered those machines, I'm waiting for the machine, and I came over, even though I'm jet lag from Kenya, I cannot sleep, all those things, but I'm here to see what's going on, and I met all those people here, and this is it. This is what we need to do. We need to pursue. We need to make this happen. And I think it will be very, very important things. Our brain is most important, and this brain does everything. If we don't have a brain, we don't exist. And this is what Dr. Lee, totally different perspective. She saw this one as an electrical device. That is mind-blowing. We only dissect, we check the chemical, all those tests we do. But her perspective, our brain looking at as electrical activities, that is totally game changing. And then they see it, she saw the diagram, and then she saw spotting where the problem is, and then so much activities, and then she can decrease down. Activity is low, she can bring it up, so she can make all those certain range of equilibrium. That is what she's trying to do. I'm from Korea, she's from Korea. She sent alumni, Seoul National University, school we are saying, but we learn as Oriental concepts yin and yang. And yang is up there, or yin is too low, we bring it up or bring it down to make it known. When I discussed with that concept, and then she said, yeah, and then I got it right away. And as I said, that's why I ordered a machine I'm waiting for. And actually, it's my honor. I will be one of the first New Era Express clinic in Atlanta, Georgia. Is that right? I think it's a real thing. This is real. And I think this will help really drastically all the medical field, veterans, even civilian. There are so many patients similar to this, but it is a group. But there's all over the place. It has sleepless, anxiety, depression, cognitive disorder. It's all over all over the world actually. So I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for giving me time, and I'm so happy. Thank you so much.
Well, as our guest depart here, thank you so much. I really appreciate the panel. Just gonna do some. Yep. Yeah, I was gonna have Trent come up here and do one more thing. Trent has the ability, I'll let him explain basically what the Army is doing right now with their TBI things and how neural match can kind of fit into that. So.
Hey, thanks. A little bit of an audible, but I was compelled to get back up here. Just to share some perspective in my currency, as mentioned, recently out of the Army, but have an understanding of where they are right now, and then also where they're trying to go, one. And then two, just share some thoughts from my own experience. I mentioned earlier, a lot of my focus, which I learned right away in my first combat tour, has been on operational stress control. Both from the standpoint of mission accomplishment and taking care of my soldiers. So, a couple of thoughts just to kind of leave you with. One, we talked about awareness education. Because this is not just a veterans issue, this is a societal issue, right? In that, we like to talk black and white makes sense. I would argue that like this and as in other thorny topics, right? The problem is in the gray and the solutions are in the gray. So how we parse this out and what we're talking about today is important. The other piece of that, stay on the education piece. One of the things that I learned over the years from just, it's always been a focus of my leadership philosophy on the operational stress control piece, talking with psychs, talking with psychologists, et cetera, et cetera. How do I help my soldiers? All right. The education piece of this is not necessarily a psychological issue. This is a cumulative effect of physical stress that can affect some psychologically. I think that's an important piece to parse out because you're talking about the stigma, it's twofold. On the veteran community, nobody wants to come forward because, hey, I'm not crazy, right? And then when you look at that perception, when you get out with the rest of our fellow citizens that think, oh, they have psychological issues. And that has a cascade effect. The example, if you have a hiring manager in a firm, and he's got a veteran who's trying to get a job, okay? And he's been bombarded with the broken veteran narrative from Hollywood and lots of sources all the time. You're gonna get things like, hey, you like blow up? Or he's cool, but like, is he gonna like blow up? I mean, that's real granular stories I've gotten from friends of mine as they transition. Okay, that's real, that's out there. And but it just gets into how you attack that. Is the solution is more awareness, more education. For the veteran side, hey man, it's okay, you're not crazy, you're hurt really bad and you get your back fixed. All right, and then on the rest of the population side is, hey, you got some physical things, but it's not this, everybody's crazy. So that's one point I want to make. So the other piece of this is, when you look at this model, I will tell you today with a high degree of confidence, having friends that are in various leadership positions still active in the United States Army, that if we get this in front of them, they will be very interested, okay? I tell you right now, if I was still a commander and you came in and gave me this pitch deck, I would be, hey, why don't we have this already? Particularly from the standpoint of, the surveillance system. The military is trying to move through that, through the Defense Health Agency, other initiatives with the TBI Center of Excellence. So there's a lot of space for this to add value in all the things we're talking about. And I just want to really come up and don't confuse my passion for nature. I'm just passionate about the topic. I just really kind of drive home that point, given, my recency on active duty. So thanks for letting me hijack part of this conference.
Trent is a consummate example of how you take care of your people leading. On that, I'd like to have Dr. Jin Wong Lee come up here. Jin, if you could, please. So in the vein of taking care of your people, we have a time-honored tradition in the military, and that is general officers generally have coins, and they're personal coins. And when a general gives that to a person, it's because they're a mission maker, or they've done something extraordinarily important. We have a lot of people who do excellent things every day, but this is the way we can recognize with a truly personal example, consistent with all the rules of ethics and all the things of that sort. But our coins are our highest symbol of thank you and appreciation for what one's done. And as you have been such a warrior in your fields and so successful, my coin, since I was both in Air Force and Space Force, talks about the core values of integrity, service, and excellence, which are the core values of the Air Force. And Semper Supra, always above, for the Space Force. And it says, Audacitor Irae, which is boldly go. And it says, be the best version of yourself, faith, family, friends, and freedom. And so when we talk about a true, yes, with South Korean roots, but a true American, a patriot, a purpose-driven, absolutely wonderful human being. Sinan said it so well. Everybody who meets this incredible human being is touched forever positively. And so it's the smallest appreciation that I can give you is my coin on behalf of all of us.
Thank you, General. I will cherish this for the rest of my life, and I will use this chance to say my word of commitment to the veterans community and all of our heroes so that we can make a better future for all of us. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate everybody who came out and supported this. We have a bus outside ready to take you to the clinic. Please feel free to jump on. We also have some lunch items at the clinic for you. Adams Company has a drink there called Unfog to help with brain mental clarity. And